And spawning in the bottom left-hand side of the map, it is for Alpha X, Astrea.
And up here in the top right-hand side of the map, the red Protoss player from Ting, he is Neeb. And of course, this is Oxide for our first map. That always will mean in these PvPs, players are looking to do those low ground kind of expansion setups. So they'll throw down their gateways as part of the wall, send their probes across the map, and it looks like Astrea is gonna go for a little bit of extra scouting with his probe. And we'll encounter Neeb's probe, and we'll know, okay, I'm gonna have my Nexus blocked. I really shouldn't be able to get that up. He's already gonna actually just throw down that second gas.
Players are going to be scouting each other here at the same exact time as well with the probes, and they will find that everything is in order and exactly the same as both players are completely mirrored down to the pylon positionings for that second pylon.
Yeah. Always fun to see PvPs on Oxide because of this weird little mind game or whatever you want to call it that always ends up happening, where you always know that you're like supposed to go for the fast Nexus, but you always know that your opponent's always going to block it, so then you don't actually go for it, but you always have to threaten that you're going to do it. Always enjoyable to see the weird ways that PvP develops as a metagame, where it's like, yes, I also need to start the Zealot, and then I need to potentially cancel the Zealot if they cancel their pylon, but usually they don't, and they'll sometimes build a Cybernetics core as well. It's like, what a weird place we found ourselves in this meta.
Yeah, really players just trying to stay one step ahead of each other. I mean, down to the gas timings, right? Like a lot of players, I'd wager wanna just go off of one gas, but they are forced preemptively into the second gas just because you're expecting that scout every single time. So there's not much room for deviation. It's usually pretty similar openings, accounting for what their opponents can do. Neeb will actually be a little bit quicker. Astrea actually has the money for the Nexus a little bit faster, right? Because of that Stargate.
Yeah, the fast Stargate that Neeb just threw down at the front lines as a part of the wall, unafraid of hiding it at all, does mean that he has invested some more resources into that. He also went for the double pylon block and had to cancel it. So he was delaying Astrea's Nexus through that means, but his own Nexus is a little bit further delayed, and Astrea knows everything about the situation for this game, as kind of does Neeb, knowing that like the Nexus came up probably a little bit faster for Astrea. So where do things go from here? Is the first Void Ray is going to be the unit of choice from Neeb?
Wow, very interesting. He started an Oracle, which made a lot of sense to me, just given that Astrea opened with the Sentry. Sentries are not particularly strong against those Oracles, and Astrea actually had gone for 2 Sentries, both of which now just used their Force Fields as well to prevent this Adept from doing too much. But and both players are gonna wall themselves off also. But then Neeb actually cancels the Oracle, starts a Void Ray, and now after the Void Ray, restarts the Oracle. So I'm not sure what the Void Ray is meant to do here. Maybe he just wants to siege the wall, seeing as there is a completed wall.
Yeah, I mean, there's unless you decide to warp in your Stalkers on the other side of that wall, there's not really a whole lot you can do with that. So now you have to kind of make that choice. And instead, Astrea is in fact going to just warp in his Stalkers on the inside of the wall, which means that this warp gate should absolutely be threatened to go down. Now, the real question here, Cats, is if you kill that warp gate, the Stalkers can pounce on the Void Ray. So do you still kill the warp gate?
Yeah, I think you probably do, right? Because it's still a freebie. And this position with the Void Ray for Neeb is so annoying. Astrea does have the shield battery to work with, though. So these Stalkers are kind of taking turns to get their shields taken out, but that's all that they can do for the time being. And on the other side, Neeb is going to come in and attempt at a stasis. Astrea, quick to react, will only get trapped with 2 workers that were in the gas, and the Stalker almost catches the Oracle on the way out, Rats.
Yeah, almost looked like he was going to be able to actually secure that kill, but nice escape there from Neeb. Being able to keep the Oracle alive is extremely valuable, especially if you're going to go for the Stargate opening that Neeb decided to go for. What I find fascinating is it's usually the Protoss player would actually go for killing, like as Neeb over here. Usually you go after the gateway, not the Stargate.
That is extremely interesting. I mean, obviously the Stargate is the tech building, so you have the option to go into that tech if you want to go back for more Void Rays or more whatever. But I feel like Neeb maybe just thinks, okay, I got the Oracle. That's going to be my scouting tool. I got the Void Ray, my defensive tool, and earlier for the Siege that forced out units for Astrea already, and wants to just make sure that he has the gateway capability to make use of his next tech in line, which is the Blink, right? So a very unusual choice. Obviously, the Stargate is going to be more expensive than the gateway. It's going to be more difficult to get in certain ways. But yeah, I mean, very unusual, but very cool and consistent decision from Neeb.
Yeah. Now we will see this Zealot just kind of trying to harass over here. It will spot out the probe, though, that's heading over to the third base, which is actually a really nice scout there for Astrea. He knows, okay, my opponent's going for the third base. I need to start thinking about knocking down my wall so I can grab my own third base. And I mean, Neeb actually has a stasis trap sitting at one of the likely locations for Astrea's own third base. So Neeb should kind of have some information, especially with his Oracle, the Hallucinating Phoenix moving across the map, that, yeah, Astrea still isn't really expanding, and Astrea really wants to hide that Dark Shrine that was coming on up, and he does so successfully, I believe.
Yeah, but reveals Blink as well, right? Like, which is not necessarily, I mean, it's something that Neeb probably anticipates is happening, but Neeb has to be thinking, wow, you revealed Blink, like you assured me that you have Blink, so there's certainly something that Astrea is probably hiding, right? So that is a little bit of a guessing game that now Neeb has to play, as the Dark Shrine will not be revealed. Blink will be used to get out of its own base from Astrea, who has a sizable number of units here, including an Immortal. 2 of those Stalkers will get trapped, so the War Prism needs to realize this and come back for them. Those Stalkers think they're outside at the moment.
Neeb is idle on his Robo. He has no idea about the Dark Shrine, and the Oracle, okay, the Oracle is pulling back home. I was going to say the Oracle is moving across the map. If he loses that Oracle, that is his only form of detection. He's throwing down stasis traps, and he's about to run straight next to the Stalkers. Oh, he gets a Revelation off and gets out of there alive. But he doesn't have enough energy for any more Revelations for a bit.
That's okay, because the Observer's almost about to pop out. And Astrea, he has had the Dark Shrine, but there haven't been DTs made. Now Neeb blinking into onto the Immortal that's exposed at the front. So we'll get that Immortal. Now still has a Void Ray to work with and his own Immortal here at the front. At the same time, Astrea has knocked into Neeb's main with the Warp Prism, forcing an evacuation. There's going to be the DTs here, but Observer already on the way from Neeb. The Stasis Trap is going to also allow Neeb to just kind of use his entire army to hunt for those DTs and this Warp Prism. The Warp Prism will go down, not before unloading the last DT in the natural base, and now Neeb can just get a clean off. I mean, that stasis was so huge because it really makes it so that Neeb has a little bit more wiggle room to split his army as he wishes.
Yeah, and Neeb even identifying, okay, you know what? I can deal with those Stalkers later that are taking out the Nexus, but reinforcements come on forward over here from Astrea. Did Neeb overcommit? He doesn't have that many units left over, and especially with Blink coming on forward, the DT still doing damage to the probes over the third base, and Neeb is starting to falter.
What an incredible Blink from the low ground there on the side of Astrea, barely having any vision with the Stalkers there. Kind of moves over to the side and allows the rest of his Stalkers to join with his army. Takes a clean engagement and gets a little bit of a supply lead. Worker-wise, they're pretty even, which means army-wise is where Astrea has most of the advantage, and all of it is here already. 36 army to 18. He knows it. He's going to blink on forward. Neeb wants to save this base. He doesn't want to just let it go, but that's probably going to end up costing him the game, as Astrea is microing like a madman here, and Neeb will have to GG out.
Wow, I'm blown away. It really looked like Neeb was getting himself set up into a nice spot there, but I guess just overcommitting a little bit with that defense, saying, okay, the DT's over at my third base, but I can clean that up later. Let me chase down this army, get as many free trades as possible. But like you said, the Stalkers blinking in and just basically reinforcing. It was Neeb who had some of his army sitting in the main base and in the natural expansion from cleaning up those DTs. So his army was a bit spread out, and Astrea was able to find and actually force an opportunity where he's only engaging with half of Neeb's army.
Yeah, exactly. He baits Neeb out of that position, right? And it's so difficult to imagine that Astrea is going to come from the low ground, from the stasis, and then blink past those rocks in order to reinforce his own army and take that very decisive fight. So Neeb kind of gets a little bit jebaited because he had to deal with the DTs, but at the same time he feels like he wants to find that army of Astrea. He didn't have to by any means, right? Like, he could have just sat back between his natural and his third, not chase the army, and then if Astrea kind of collapses onto the army of Neeb with everything that he had after the stasis, Neeb can reinforce with the units that were in his main and his natural base. But instead, like you said, Astrea manages to bait Neeb into taking 2 separate engagements, him having the whole of his army versus Neeb's half, and then the other half of the army. And with that brilliant maneuver, Astrea is going to get the first game. Wow.
Yeah, literally all off the back of like that individual moment right there. But it was a pretty close game for the most part, with some kind of interesting decisions being made, especially with the Void Ray. Although I will say, though, the Void Ray was participating in the fight. You saw that it was down to like it's 1 hit away from some stalkers outside of the shields from being picked off. If that Void Ray had died in the fight, the Warp Prism is able to keep those DTs alive and is continuing to harass and stuff. I actually think that Astrea just outright wins right there if that Void Ray had died. So it was kind of fortunate that Neeb got away with the Void Ray in the first place and was able to keep that alive. But, well, small little things can definitely make a massive, massive difference. As we start down here, the bottom right-hand side of the map, it is going to be our red Protoss player from Ting. He is Neeb.
And in the top left for Alpha X, it is Max Angel, Astrea.
PvP is such a fun matchup to watch, Paulo, but it's so stressful to play, man. I do not envy these guys having to deal with all the extremely split-second decision-making that you have to do in this matchup, and just being able to constantly keep an eye out for all of the different ways that things can fall apart literally instantaneously. Like, you can have an advantage and things can just completely fall apart because you missed something, or you miss micro, or you're out of position.
Yeah, there is I guess an ancient wisdom Chinese proverb type thing about a farmer and their horse, and how you are meant to not basically count your blessings, right? Or your doomings before anything, really. Like, just kind of see things as they come. Because at this point, when we see the stasis trap, we're thinking, wow, great move by Neeb. This is gonna allow him so much room. But it ends up being his doom instead, right? Like, it ends up being the thing that really bites him back in the butt and ends up losing him the game, in spite of it being the move that initially gave him so much room to wiggle, at least apparently. So yeah, that's kind of nuts, and it speaks exactly to what you're pointing out, Ravi.
Always a little bit scary when you have those kind of moments where you're like, the stasis trap. Well, yes, half of your army is taken off of the map effectively for like a certain period of time, but it also means those units are invulnerable, and you know that they're going to eventually pop out, and suddenly your opponent's going to have this massive army again. So yeah, always a bit difficult to judge how to handle those situations, especially when the game gets a little bit chaotic like that. Astrea trapping in the probe over here for Neeb, going to guarantee that kill. But both these players are actually open up with a Stalker Sentry first this game, and looking to open up with sort of like safer middle of the road openings.
Yes, indeed. This probe inside the main of Astrea will finally fall to the Stalker, as both players getting set up to take their natural bases. Astrea and Neeb, I believe, both have a Sentry available, so we're going to have hallucinations in order to scout from both players. And Neeb getting an extra safety, potentially Stalker, whereas Astrea is getting an extra Sentry and a Stalker from those gateways.
Yeah. Astrea, stylistically, I think, really does enjoy having more sentries than not. He's one of those players that was very, very happy going up to like 3 to 5 sentries or something, sometimes in these PvPs. Sometimes he goes a little bit overboard. But, I mean, he stays very much in the know, but he's also able to actually use those force fields against a lot of kind of like early attacks and stuff. Even against Blink Stalkers, force fields do have some value in the sense that, like, you'd think like, oh, you can't really force field in your opponent's Blink Stalkers, but if you kind of force field them out a bit, then they have to make a decisive blink forward to actually go for you. And that can be a little bit scary. It sometimes means that they're committing to situations that maybe they realize are not so favorable for them. So always enjoyed watching Astrea's usage of the sentries.
Yeah, it's very, very inspiring indeed. Both players are going to finish their Twilight Council. Both players are going for the Forge. Both players are going for the Blink. Complete mirrors for the most part. Similar supplies, exact same worker counts. And Astrea actually with a few workers not mining at his natural, but I'm sure he'll realize within the next few seconds as the world-class player that he is. And 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go. Hello. I mean, these workers are amounting to a little bit. There we go.
There we go. You had to wait for a little bit of that delay to catch up, you know. Yeah. We're over the internet. It takes some time for your voice to get over to them. No, but you're absolutely right. It is very, very mirrored builds and still continuing on mirrored, which actually gets me excited because I think that some of the times that these two players really, really go at it in very fun and crazy ways is when they do get into kind of like that mid to late game stage where it's beyond just, I have like 15 or so stalkers, I'm going to put some pressure on you. It's like, yeah, we both got up into like the Immortals and we're getting up our third bases safely and we're starting to think about disruptors. And that is where truly, I would say, you know, the poop hits the fan. It's everything goes absolutely like chaotic from there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, poop is not something that you want hitting the fan, that's for sure. I mean, not if you're under the fan.
How are you going to clean that up?
How are you going to clean the fan and then everything that's under it? I guess it, yeah, depends. But we'll see what happens in this game as the poop has not yet hit the fan, but it might just be on the way as Neeb is going to blink in with 4 stalkers potentially, or at least evaluating his chances. Okay, 1 stalker blinks in first, then the next. And Astrea with a beautiful pylon, actually, like an echo chamber block like maneuver, but with a force field, actually, Neeb still finds the room to blink on over. Astrea's blink not yet done. So a small detail there going in favor of Neeb. 3 probes have been found, 3 force fields have been spent. Neeb has to blink on forward just to try to save his stalkers. One of them will fall. The next one should have a blink available soon, but it's not soon enough as Astrea does punish 3 stalkers and a recall for 3 probes and a few force fields. But yeah, I would say Astrea with a very good trade.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you were pointing out the pylon block there was so big because normally if you're going for those 4 stalker run bys, you're willing to try and do the blink forward to the back or to the very back of the mineral line as you sniped off a few workers. Then you recall out and you're kind of like mostly safe. But now those 3 stalkers could make or break the difference here when you have mirrored builds and then one player just kind of loses a lot of their units. Neeb's going to be in a bit of trouble over here. He's definitely lower on the stalker count, but he's going to eventually have the shield battery coming on up. Is it going to make or break the difference? Is it even going to come up in time?
Yeah, very good force field once again, making it so Neeb doesn't have the full surface area that he wants. His Immortal a little bit late to the fight, but Astrea's Immortal haven't taken so much damage, and now getting blinked on top of will be taken down. Neeb with the better pieces now as the Immortal is still here. Astrea with the greater numbers, however, so still pressing on the issue. Blink with a blink. Neeb with a blink forward rather as the Immortal will rejoin the fight from behind, and Astrea does not feel like he can longer stay here, so back and forth is going to be the name of the day, the entire day, it feels like. But in this series, certainly to start.
Yeah, man, if that War Prism had been picked off, that would have been an insanely large win there for Neeb. But Astrea eventually does decide just back off. Remember, Neeb had a third base. I was going up during all this, and Astrea really only started it on the tail end when basically he got pushed all the way back and realized that this attack was not going to work. So not only is his worker count starting to lack a little bit further behind, but just the third base timing is really going to hurt Astrea for like long-term or longevity here. Neeb being able to hold on there was a really big deal.
Oh, huge. I mean, talk about the tech as well. Neeb's charge is nearly done. +2 is already started and 25-30% of the way done. Neeb getting ready for a counterattack or an attack altogether with the War Prism coming up. Astrea Neeb using the overcharge to protect from Astrea's backstab here, as Astrea feels the need to make something happen to slow Neeb down. But he's slowing him down for what? There's our answer, actually, as a Robo Bay is now making its way through for Astrea. If he can get to those disruptors, Ravi, anything can still happen. But for the time being, Neeb, if he manages to cross the map, Astrea could be in a lot of trouble.
Astrea really has to be careful about how many stalkers he's losing on the retreat over here. Remember, Neeb not only has like close to the number of stalkers that Astrea has, as the Depths are going to try and run on in. Neeb is going to deal with this with some of the charge loss, but it's not actually that big of a stalker lead for Astrea right now. If Neeb feels confident with his stalker count, his stalkers plus the Immortals and these charge lots might actually be a kill move before the Disruptor count really gets up. The first Disruptor is just now starting, and Neeb is actually at a point where, yeah, he knows he can move across the map. He's got the army to end this game.
He definitely has, but not for long, as Astrea's first Disruptor is about to make its way onto the field, Ravi. So let's see what happens here, as Neeb is going to push on forward with a lot of stuff here. The Zealots also, but perhaps not in the prime position here, as he is pushing onto chokes for the most part. Astrea knows that, so he is actually holding the choke against those Zealots, but the numbers are definitely here for Neeb. It's going to come down to this Disruptor shot. Astrea being very zealous not to use it, not to spend it for nothing, and actually Neeb will just blink on forward and pick it off. Ravi, this is getting nuts. Neeb with a really strong timing now.
Yeah, there are those stalkers are kiting back against these zealots, but we are seeing that Neeb is pushing on forward with the rest of his stalkers. The cannons are getting knocked out, even though the cannons have contributed quite a bit to the fight. The Immortals have sat in the back lines. Now they're going to get focus already down, blown forward on top by the stalkers, able to snipe them off. The reinforcements for Neeb are not really coming, but does he just have enough to actually take this out?
And even if he doesn't, even if Astrea was to barely hold, which is not looking like the case, he would have lost 22 workers in the process. This game is looking all Neeb here for the equalizer, Ravi. And I have no idea how Astrea is going to bring it back. Certainly not with that Warp Prism flying over the Stalkers.
Yeah, Neeb able to find some more damage over here, and that Warp Prism of his own is finally warping in some more reinforcements. Astrea just warped in a few Stalkers of his own, but Neeb clearly can just warp in more with his economic advantage. He's overpowering Astrea and saying, you know what? Game number 1 may have went your way, but game number 2, a stock standard game where both these players going for the same styles, definitely going in Neeb's favor. GG.
GG indeed. And oddly enough, Neeb looked stressed after winning the second game and gave a cheeky smile after losing the first game, actually. So that's pretty cool to see. It seems like both players are very well matched for each other this time around. And Ravi, we have a tight score. How exciting.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that. As you know, this, like we said before, like this could have been a series where it just looked like Neeb somehow has just turned it up to another level and outclassed Astrea a bit. It could have also been a situation where Astrea just looked like indomitable in PvP, as this is one of the matchups that he's oftentimes felt really comfortable with. Like, we could have had a 3-0 either way. I'm really happy that we're already getting a tied up series, and honestly a pretty close series, I would say. Like, in terms of, there's obviously like things eventually end up leaning one way or another, or the player takes a big advantage or something, but there's a lot of contention up until those singular moments, and then it's not like both players making radical massive mistakes on either end. It's like one player is kind of finding those moments and then capitalizing and then securing and maintaining that little lead because they're so close.
They're super mega close. And I mean, in this particular game, actually, it's Astrea who finds that little moment to start. And then it's Neeb to expect Astrea will look to capitalize, right? And then Astrea, when he tries to capitalize, Neeb just has that bit more, like maybe cutting probes or something to make it happen. I really wasn't paying like complete attention up until that moment. But somehow, some way, Neeb scrambles to get enough units, gets the Immortal out on the field, and deflects Astrea. That looked a little bit deflated after that, right? Like that attack was a lot of eggs on that basket. It does not work out for him, and Neeb does equalize the series after an amazing defense in spite of losing those 3 Stalkers to begin with. So let's see what happens here in Jagannatha as a Ravi in the bottom left-hand side of the map for Ting. It's Neeb.
And up here in the top right-hand side of the map, we have the blue Protoss player from Alpha X. He is Astrea.
Ravi, which of these players would you say is most Texan in your book?
Most Texan?
Yeah.
I mean, neither. Because we have a West Coast and an East Coast player, right? Like, not. You know, I could see Astrea being a little bit more like, if you want to go like stereotypical cowboy kind of style, I think Astrea would look better in a cowboy hat than Neeb.
Fair enough. All right. Yeah. The great people of Texas, they claim some of the better players. Cyril has been deemed a favorite son of Texas at this point, but I'm wondering which one of these two they will claim for themselves.
Are you talking about how also they? I think it was California. I think it was like an Anaheim event where Stefano was indoctrinated as an American player. Where
that
the crowd, for
often,
some reason, was
USA.
Yeah, they're just chanting USA for Stefano, and I'm like, this is like Twitch chat, but brought to a live audience.
That was incredible. Yeah, it was fantastic indeed. I remember that. I mean, yeah, the USA fans definitely, they tend to claim over the best players, and I mean, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, America's a strong military force, man, including in StarCraft.
That is very true. As this game progresses, without much noteworthy, Ravi, the first few units are gonna be started here, as it's gonna be Stalkers on one side for Astrea, single Stalker and a Sentry for Neeb, so making use of potentially the energy a little bit earlier. and trying to keep tabs a little bit earlier, potentially at a small deficit if Astrea chooses to be aggressive.
Yeah, Neeb's probe is hanging around though, so I think he will end up scouting out the potential of the Stalker Sentry, as he's got that pylon over there. Astrea's going to keep his Stalkers up on the high ground, so I think at most right now, what Neeb can gather is that it's not, in fact, double Adepts, or it's either double Adept, or it's like double Adept that's extremely delayed because Astrea's keeping them at home, or it's probably not double Adept, because normally you want to send the Adept straight across the map.
Yeah, not going to be the case here. No Adepts on the field. 2 sentries will now be started on the side of Astrea as well. Neeb already with his 2 sentries on the field will also be taking a shield battery for defense, and tucked kind of a little bit further back than you would expect a shield battery at this point. So maybe anticipating that Astrea could have gone for 4 Stalkers and that they could appear and maybe pick off a shield battery at the front, right? So that kind of goes to show like what Neeb might be thinking about. However, what he was thinking before will be irrelevant once this Phoenix arrives and gets taps on what's really going on here.
Yeah, nice that it's able to barely survive and make it in, scout out the Twilight Council on top of that unit count and everything. So everything that Neeb wanted to know has been effectively scouted, including just, yeah, the shield battery at the natural expansion, that Astrea has no fear of a shield battery needed in the main base for like a Stargate opening or something. Because, you know, Astrea's been going for his own hallucinating Phoenix scouts and is going to move in forward and see, yeah, you just got your Twilight Council and Forge coming on up.
Okay, Blink gets started on the side of Astrea, so that's going to be a little bit quicker, but we probably expect that from the Twilight Council you just mentioned from Neeb, so he is not going to be lagging too far behind on that front. There is going to be his Forge as well. That's going to be a little bit quicker than Astrea, so again, Neeb looking for the upgrade leads heading into the mid game, and we'll see how Astrea is going to respond to this, perhaps just focusing a little bit more on economy, maybe a faster third, or some other tech instead, but he has to respond some way, somehow.
Yeah, I'm actually interested. So Astrea has been doing more warp-ins than oftentimes we'll see Protoss players in this situation, because he has just been continuously warping in a lot more of these Stalkers. He's sitting 7-3 because Neeb is investing into, like you said, the Forge and the robotics facility and +1 weapons. Neeb is getting up his extra gateways and everything. Like, these are all transitionary things for a slightly later game advantage, but Astrea has just been hammering out units, and while he is grabbing a third base, he really does want to try and get something aggressive done with these units. And Neeb, that hallucinating Phoenix scout is so important to scout.
Yeah, will he have enough weapons though? At this point, 8 Stalkers to the 5 of Neeb. Like you said, that is a huge hallucinated scout, and Neeb feels like he needs a little bit of buffer here. Perhaps if those Stalkers get focused fired by the Stalkers of Astrea, that'll be great. And putting them at the front, one of them already gets focused fired. The second one also absorbing a lot of shots from the Stalkers of Astrea, so that works out wonders. The mind games from Neeb, and Astrea is going to feel like mission accomplished for the most part, perhaps, but he just killed only 2 hallucinations.
Yeah, and you can identify when you've killed hallucinations versus real units. They do have like a very different death animation, and nice little blink there. But I think just, now, like the double shield batteries are there. It's so hard to get a whole lot more done. Now that the Immortal's out as well, definitely I think Astrea's got to be very careful about trying to be aggressive. And in fact, he is not. He's just going to back up and might actually be back home just in time to help deal with the Adepts that are popping in forward.
Yeah, Astrea does try to take one advantage here and having the faster third base, so that's something going his way. But that is the only thing going his way, right? Because like you were saying, he was committing so much to those units, and in doing that, he has delayed a lot of his tech. So Neeb already with charge starting, with +1 basically done here, basically finished within the next 10 seconds. And now with his own third, just playing a little bit of catch-up, but not by a lot. An Immortal already out on the field. A Warp Prism has made its way out on the field as well for Neeb. Things are looking great for him once again.
Yeah, the Thunder Shaft is looking like he's going to be able to strike soon. Once those upgrades finish on up, Neeb is going to be looking super, super strong. He is going to be doing this little move out a bit early on. I am a little worried by how spread out his units are, but I think once he groups all of them together, I mean, as long as he can rely on the firepower of that Immortal, he really needs that first warp in, though. Like, he is actually lacking a bit behind in army supply right now. And okay, yeah, he is going to back up. It was just kind of like a little threatening, but that's one of those moments that can go horribly, horribly wrong. If that Stalker count for Astrea had realized like there wasn't that much, he blinks forward, snipes off the Immortal or the Prism, like actually that could end the game right there.
Yeah, +1 gets started for Astrea, kind of timely, but there might still be a little bit of gap where Neeb gets his +2, especially if he can chrono boost it diligently. And Astrea only has nothing, +0, right? Like, so Neeb will have potentially a timing window where his upgrades will be 2 upgrades ahead on the attack, which would be gigantic. Astrea, however, with a very good position himself, 2 immortals on location, only 1 here for Neeb. So yeah, not too bad here of a punchback from an Astrea that really needs to get some dubs here.
Yeah, I think that the window is now passed though, because charge is finished up. 4 gateways were just finishing as Astrea poked in, which means they need like an extra 5 or 10 seconds to turn into warp gates, and then they warp in. But I think now Neeb has the firepower of warp gates in terms of how many units he can just suddenly reinforce with. He's got charge against 0 charge. Actually, no, sorry. Astrea did manage to finish up charge, and he's actually got up his first Archon on the way. So you know what? I do think that Astrea has a solid chance of actually making a defense here, because, you know, even-ish army supply, or sorry, ahead army supplies for Astrea, like, he's got a really solid army.
Yeah, and +1 being a little bit quicker to finish than +2 will mean that both players will actually have, their upgrades kicking in at the same time, which means Neeb will only be one upgrade ahead for this fight. And maybe trying to hit, I mean, he was trying to hit a perfect timing here with a +2, but not really finding a window where he has a too big of a lead, at least on that front, right? So that's going to be a good defense for now for Astrea, who has found the Archons in time to mitigate for potential charge lots on the side of Neeb. Neeb now reposting to try and deny this base. There is no shield battery here available, but there is good positioning and good warpins from Astrea. Will that be enough, Ravi, as this unfolds?
I'm a little bit worried for Neeb right now. I feel like he may have overstayed his welcome over here. His army supply was a bit smaller. He is going to be dealing with these charge lots pretty quickly, but he does need to think about getting out of there and using that prism to pick up the immortals in the back line so that it doesn't just get sniped off. He does do a nice hot pickup, uses that high ground vision to his advantage as well. But again, it is actually still a little bit of army supply in favor of Astrea. So I like the idea of taking the fights as he's like retreating, because, you know, the reinforcements aren't going to be as fast or anything for Astrea, but stick around too long, it can get really, really dangerous. His advantage is as the game goes on, the fact that he has robotics Fae already producing disruptors, the fact that he has +3 weapons on the way. Like, I think just taking a fight right now is not necessarily to his advantage.
Yeah, completely agreed. He's going to open up the field a little bit by killing those rocks, make it a little bit easier on the transfer for his new probes onto the 4th base as well, so quicker to saturate it, and just a little bit more space to work with for his charged zealots. However, perhaps getting rid of... I guess it's not too bad to get rid of those rocks for the disruptors either. They'll have a quicker path to the army, but less chokes to work with. Regardless, Astrea probably not looking to fight in that choke. So yeah, Neeb has a couple of arrow probes. They're kind of insignificant at this point in the game. But yeah, he will stabilize, and that's very much, like you were saying, exactly what he needs. 2 disruptors being produced at once. I believe it's a single robo on the side of Astrea. So yeah, Neeb still getting well situated in spite of the supply deficit here.
Yeah, single robo and also no robotics bay just yet, as finally just gets added on as I say that for Astrea. So he's eventually going to be getting into that position, but by the time the robotics bay finishes up, Neeb's going to have almost 6 disruptors. That is a killer number. Now, still, the advantage is that Astrea has the larger army supply. He's up almost 20 army supply. Neeb has the upgrade advantage still, though, and, well, that upgrade advantage is only going to last for a few more seconds. I think you'll have another 15, 20 seconds. Upgrades are even, so Neeb, you don't want to take a fight right now. This is literally the only time in the game you don't want to take a fight.
I completely agree with you, Ravi, but he does have Disruptor, so it does mean that he will be able to potentially turn fights. I agree with you, however, he doesn't need to do it, right? Like, this is a risky maneuver, and while it can go well, because the Disruptors are obviously very explosive units, it could also go terribly, and he could be handing an advantage back to an Astrea that is now starting his own Disruptor production. So we'll see what happens. Astrea is going to blink on forward, snipe one of those Disruptors. Down to 3 now is Neeb at the front as the 4th one rejoins, 5th one as well.
Yeah, charge lot run-bys for both sides actually encounter each other. It's definitely going to end up favoring Astrea, but I think these charge lots should be caught by all the reinforcements. Does pull Neeb a good bit further back. Astrea's actually just going to turn and fight, and now he realizes, all right, time to buy some time. DTs reveal themselves with that little swiperoonie there. But now we have both these players' armies kind of awkwardly moving across the map away from each other. Neeb is going to be the first one to realize that some of the army is over here, but he's going to get spread out between these two different angles, and this gets very awkward for disruptors.
Yeah, that's exactly what Astrea is looking for, is to make use of a surround in order to mitigate the effect of those disruptors. Astrea now with his own disruptors is going to look to protect his retreat with the rest of his army. And yeah, this has been a great fight for positioning, right? Like Neeb is pulled back, like you were saying, but Astrea will use that opportunity to move out on the map. But Neeb quickly realizes as soon as he warps in those DTs, I need to get back out there. I need to contest for this terrain. I need to make use of my very positional units in the disruptors. And the closer you are to your opponent, you know, the less room they're going to have to wiggle and to run away from those disruptor shots. So if you're threatening a base, if you're kind of anchored with these disruptors on offense, they can be extremely hard to dislodge. We'll see, though, as the game stabilizes, which player will be looking for those positional leads.
Yeah, the DTs are going to be, I think, the next step over here for Neeb to try and take advantage of, because once your opponent gets up, I would say actually arguably like 5 disruptors is kind of like this point where now, even if you were ahead on disruptors, and it can still be an advantage, but oh yeah, I mean, especially if you get shots like those, but your opponent still has the ability to take some really good trades here and there. They can just need 1 or 2 really good disruptor shots. Charizlot's kind of getting caught over here, but Astrea also knows that Neeb's army is pushing further and further up to the top left-hand side. He's not really moving in that direction just yet. It looks like Neeb is going to back off. He doesn't want to get caught completely, you know, just pinned up in that top left-hand side. He needs to keep his retreat path open.
That disruptor is cute, but it's actually a little bit mispositioned, I believe. It's a little bit further down the ramp than it wants to be. If it's like 1 hex up that ramp, then it's invisible from the low ground, but I believe it's far down the ramp enough that Neeb should be able to spot it if he walks nearby. So the potential for that disruptor shot to be huge and just kind of super surprising is maybe not there where Astrea thinks that it is. But we'll see as the game progresses if he can make use of that. As Neeb moves towards it right now, potentially. No, he's just going to be moving towards Astrea, maybe looking for a surround, actually.
He's going to be able to find a lot of the disruptors over here for Astrea. Now, Astrea does manage to snag a handful of those stalkers, but definitely not worth the cost of, I was going to say 3 disruptors, but it ends up being 2. A massive DT Zealot run by over here does back off thanks to the shield battery overcharge and knowing that Neeb's reinforcements are not too far behind it. Oh, the disruptor just gets kicked off, like you said, Paulo.
Yeah, Neeb also had an observer nearby too, so that that disruptor was double kind of tagged. And look at that! Look at that dog.
The dog?
Dog.
Oh, yeah. Dog in a very, very chaotic battlefield right now.
It's a German Shepherd, I think, right? Or maybe an alien German Shepherd.
An alien. It's a space German Shepherd. It's like space Australians. They're basically the same, but you know, they're aliens.
Indeed. A lot of Stargates, though, going down, Rabs, as we are getting ready for the late game. At least that is what Neeb wants to say and do. And yeah, that's a cool and interesting transition. Sometimes we get stuck in this kind of mid to late game with the disruptors for a long time, but Neeb doesn't want to have any of that. He wants to make sure that he has a way out of this, that he is not completely committed, and that he doesn't just straight up lose if, you know, his army gets blown up and he can start trading, etc., etc. But he's still in a little bit of danger, right? Like the bank is not there yet. The transition's just starting to happen. But if the game progresses long enough, I think Neeb will accrue that advantage.
Awkward moment over here as both these players' armies are here, but it's only a portion of Neeb's army, whereas this is a majority of Astrea. So Astrea able to get a few free pickings over there. The rest of Neeb's army is moving in from the left-hand side, maybe looking for opportunity. It's really funny. Both these players have their Zealots and DTs on opposite sides, and neither one of them have been able to move it forward. But like you said, it really does feel like Neeb is the one that has the longer game plan here. And if Neeb can continue to just keep Astrea distracted, like I love that he's poking and prodding and stuff, but no need to commit. No need to commit too far.
Yeah, this is actually super interesting because Neeb has all of his disruptors on one side with a little bit of an army. So that is the army that wants to fight the big army of Astrea, right? Because then the large army of Astrea is liable for having so many units that are going to get hit by those disruptor shots. But instead, it's Astrea that gets the better trades because he has the greater army without using those disruptors on one side. So this army of Neeb will get crushed by this army of Astrea. If Neeb could swap both of his armies, I think he absolutely would right now. And that's what we may be seeing as Neeb looks to kind of join both armies together, looking for a flank onto Astrea's.
This is straight out of like a co-op mission. How many cannons there are? I feel like Neeb has been playing a little Karax or something lately in the co-op, but we also have a bit of Neeb's army coming in from the north side, able to find some of these DTs, but not able to secure the kills on most of them. Does blink forward and kills a handful of them. Now Astrea is moving in from behind to hit this backside of this army. This gets really weird though, because Neeb is going to spot this out with his DTs, and even those DTs will get picked off. Now Neeb can come in with a flank from both sides.
Yeah, those DTs barely off of killing an extra 2 disruptors, but the next link is going to eliminate those as there's very low HP on them. So Neeb looking to take a good engagement here as most of the disruptors of Astrea have been deleted. Of course, the army of Astrea can still stand, but if you turn around, the disruptors of Neeb will also get involved. Astrea now going back to hit disruptors, gets a massive shot. So this will now stall the momentum of Neeb, who has only 1 disruptor left. Astrea works in DTs. He knows that this is his time to go. He's going to blink on forward, and now it's Astrea on the chase as Neeb retreats once again to an awkward position on a high ground. Things will kind of calm down. The mothership is out here as well. Ravi, some chaotic, exciting moments there. The game could have been decided either way. It felt like at some points there, but neither player able to fully capitalize.
Cats, I'm really glad that you were talking, because I think that my heart jumped out of my mouth and it took me a few minutes to, 10, 15 seconds to put it back into my body, because that was really stressful to watch. But I mean, at the end of the day, now the mothership is here. The observer, of course, is still going to provide a lot of value and be able to scout out all these units. The cloak isn't going to come into effect unless, somehow Neeb snipes off the observers, but is still just such a powerful tool. I mean, we've seen how positional the units are and everything. For example, even these DTs and stuff, as they get revelations, if really he needs to, Neeb can actually both recall with the Nexus. He can also recall with the mothership now.
Excellent point. And these DTs will get recalled into their death because they're tagged by the oracles, but the tag actually wears off timely, or doesn't. No, the oracle's back here and tags them once again. But with the battery overcharge, Neeb will be able to hold. Oh, it's observers and not the oracle that were here for spotters. But at the other side and under the chaos, Neeb will find a couple of good disruptor shots. The supplies are still very close to each other. There is the mothership, of course. There is the air upgrades as well coming for Neeb. So all of this fight and all of these little wins are kind of really favorable now for Neeb. Wow.
I mean, that is a DT force that will not be stopped, but the cannons, they right-click down. Neeb actively right-click down the observer, so now the DT defense is too strong. Neeb's DTs defeat the DTs of Astrea because he just doesn't have detection anymore. Time warp being thrown down over here. The carriers are in the mix, and Astrea is realizing, oh no, this is a really tough spot now, because he's going to end up almost guaranteed losing this top left-hand base if Neeb decides to push into it. Looks like Neeb is just going to go for the really safe pull-out over here. He doesn't want to end up overcommitting, especially since, you run out of space to retreat against the disruptor shots. It can spell your death, but, I mean, even just the carriers being added in complicates things so much for Astrea.
Yeah, even the mothership as well. I mean, there was a single observer there for Astrea for a very long time. Now 2 more in production. So as he's recognizing, this is a battle for vision. Oftentimes, he has 1 single oracle, but Revelation, of course, doesn't last as long as it once did. So really, observers are going to be the more reliable means, and losing this oracle could be terrible as well. Astrea continuing to look for whatever openings he can find, but Neeb just has kind of his own protective squad. He's gonna blink into this base. This could be a little bit dangerous as Astrea looks to kind of collapse onto this army of Neeb, maybe go up that high ground, but the ramp is difficult to breach. So Astrea is gonna be kept off of it from now, and maybe Neeb can find good disruptor shot there towards the end as well. If he can find the base and recall out, this will be a huge victory for Neeb. I don't think he wants to go back down this ramp.
Neeb is trying to take a very aggressive nexus on Astrea's side of the map. And the disruptors are going to be firing out some big shots on Neeb's army. He gets a lot of the stalkers over there. Is that enough? He's going to be able to find even more. Neeb finally comes down the ramp with his army. He comes forward with the DTs that he had warped in earlier back at home. And the stalkers alone are not enough to contend with that. Neeb takes a massive supply lead over here. It's really just the disruptors that Astrea has to rely on now against the charge blast and DTs, which can be okay, but at the end of the day, is it actually enough? Well, I mean, keeps getting shots like that,
with that hit, Astrea probably feeling like he just got a lifeline in this game, but it's still going to be very difficult. His economy is just brutalized by the Thunder Shaft. So it's looking a little bit difficult here, Ravi, to imagine a world where Astrea recovers. What a beautiful maneuver from Neeb, though, to kind of escort his units down the ramp by bringing the rest of his army and collapsing onto the army of Astrea, as we've seen so many times throughout this series, right? And I mean, Astrea just seems to be almost out of moves, in spite of those a few very juicy disruptor shots. Oh, that's not gonna be it.
All of the disruptors fire their shots, so now they have to recall out to get away safely. Now, of course, this is a nice snag over here for Astrea. He's even going to be able to find the observers, which is actually a really nice snag as well, which actually keeps his observers alive for a little bit longer. But, oh, Neeb's waiting for this army. Now, Blink should be off of cooldown over here, so the Stalkers can get out of there alive. Astrea's disruptors do come in to reinforce, so he stays alive for a little bit longer. But, oh my god, that connection.
That is a big connection indeed. And, oh, Ravi. How do you recover if you're Astrea? He's also bases behind at this point, barely mining. The income graph does not look favorable for him. The army and the supply both in favor of Neeb as well. The tech in favor of Neeb. This is all of the advantages going in favor of Neeb. So this is a nice pickup from Astrea, but he's gonna need a little bit more than that. Now looking to make it happen here on the bottom of the map. Of course, he is near maxed hand disruptors. I mean, never call it quits when you have that many.
Yeah, I do think that Neeb's army is still very ground-based. There are a handful of those carriers in the air, but the Stalker count is high enough you can get on top of it. But this is becoming a disaster. The disruptors get completely segregated off. The time warp coming down, the interceptors and the carriers demolish the Stalker count. And I don't think that Astrea can replenish that.
Yeah, and as Neeb blinks in with the DTs and then, you know, synthesizes with the rest of his army, he is just going to be able to close it out by the looks of it. Astrea with one last disruptor shot, and as that one goes down, I feel like so do any chances for Astrea to come back into this game. I think we are witnessing the last few moments, Ravi. What a game this has been. Back and forth as we expect from the two, but it looks like Neeb will take a lead in the series.
Yeah, and I mean, just great identification there from Neeb as he takes that 2-1 lead, like you mentioned. But I mean, it was very, very few points in the game where Neeb wasn't just a little bit ahead in kind of his tech and his forethought for like the next stage of the game, right? He was constantly thinking about, okay, my weapon upgrades and all that stuff was a little bit faster. He was staying ahead on the disruptor tech, getting that up a little bit faster. He was going into the carrier transition mothership. I want to not even just say faster, like he did it and Astrea didn't even get there because he realized it was going to be too late. So great win there from Neeb. It's going to build him some momentum. We're going to head to a break and see if Astrea can turn around some of that momentum before we hop into game number 4. We'll see you guys in just a little bit.
Welcome back to the last before last match, as we have a PvP to see who is going to go and face Scarlet. So far, it's looking like Neeb has the upper hand, Ravi. Last game was incredible, but it was always, like you were saying during the break, Neeb one step ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that even in the game, or the game that Astrea has won, it was like, I think a little bit off the back of also some like early game advantages that he was able to accumulate and everything. So far, the later stages of these series have gone a little bit further in favor of Neeb's way. So I'm interested to see what this young man's game plan is. Down here in the bottom right-hand side, the blue Protoss player from Alpha X, he is Astrea.
And in the top left-hand side, it is Forting Neeb.
Something really important that we have not talked as much about yet is that, unlike Europe, I mean, we don't actually know who the top 2 players are that get an invite to the season finals. North America only has spots for the top 2 players. So this is going to be the match that determines who goes to the season finals and who doesn't. So it's, I mean, Neeb, of course, is a player who's been to the season finals many times, and he's been on that global stage. And while Astrea has absolutely, and I love the way that you had actually mentioned this the other day, Katz, for Astrea can compete and actually sometimes even have a better shot against some of the Koreans than he will versus, like, say, a player like Scarlet at times. Yeah. Astrea has not actually competed, I would say, this past year as much in the season finals. Like, I think that a lot of the time, it has been a bit more of a struggle for him, or like he hasn't gotten that opportunity as often as, say, like Neeb did. So this is an important match for him to try and come back in.
Yeah, and that's very interesting that you should mention that, Ravi, because even I feel like Astrea can even outperform Neeb against that sort of player, because Neeb is less explosive. Neeb is more kind of composed in his approach, right? Like Neeb beats the people who, usually when he's in shape, the people who he's supposed to beat, but usually falls to the people that we expect them to fall against. Whereas Astrea is a trickier player. Astrea is the type of player that can lose to players that we don't expect him to sometimes, but he can also just give super great fights against some of the very, very best in the world, right? And we've seen it time and time again, and at this point it's just almost unsurprising. So I would love to see him get a chance to show what he's made of in the global 100%. Stage.
Yeah, I think it would mean a lot for him. And this is actually, I think, one of the few times in basically every single season this year, Astrea has been knocked out in the lower bracket by Scarlet. And for once, instead of being knocked out by Scarlet, he was knocked down to the lower bracket by Scarlet and now has to face off versus Neeb, who I actually think that Astrea typically does better against Neeb than he does against Scarlet. This has obviously been a tough series in the sense that he is currently down one, but they've been close games and everything. So this is maybe going to be one of his best chances to try and come back in the series.
The lag. Neeb lag.
Oh no, that's
text and internet.
That's one of the text. One of the players or the people we actually cannot afford to drop out.
Yeah, let's actually see the aftermath of that lag. Neeb is lagging for 2 workers behind. So when he says I had like 10 seconds of lag, yeah, exactly. Like that's what he's saying. He's not saying, oh, like, you know, I lost a unit because of it. He's saying I actually couldn't do anything for 10 seconds. So that's where his temp 2 probe disadvantage comes from. And we could very clearly see the lag. So he's gonna ask for a remake here. That's perfectly fine. And it makes a lot of sense. And if we look even at the time supply cap, that is consistent as well, right? At the end screen that you guys cannot see, we see that Neeb at this stage has been supply capped for 13 extra seconds than Astrea, which is just about that 10 second to 13 second, I guess, gap that he's talking about.
Yeah, definitely going to be something that we should try and rectify if possible. I mean, even though Stargate, for example, finishing up there, like just sitting idle for a bit is pretty unusual for a player like Neeb. So yeah, we'll be able to jump in and just resume the game exactly 10 seconds earlier, which is great. But I think in the meanwhile, while they get that set up and everything, I think one of the things I do want to mention also is like, because you made a really good point. Like, I think that Astrea oftentimes is a bit more explosive in his potential. This was really showcased, I feel like, last year in the War Chest Team League and everything, right? Where Astrea was basically able to like start taking maps off of not just like Koreans. He was beating players like the Marus and the Innovations, and he was beating some of the best players in the world. He was taking maps off of like, I think I might be misremembering the exact things, but like I remember him taking maps off of like some of those top Zerg players, like you know, a Rogue or like a Dark and things like that. So it was really just a top-notch showcasing from Astrea of what he can do is put on that global stage and everything.
Yeah.
Now, of course, again, like you have to be able to qualify for that stage. It's this weird irony that like the people in your regional competition in some ways give you more trouble than the people in the global competition. But you got to make it through that stage.
I would go as far as to say, Ravi, that for the 4 Shades of Protoss, your team, and maybe actually I would go as far as to say that in the entire league, Astrea was probably the most valuable pick for cost, right? Like, because he was kind of like, no one really picked him early on. Like, and you know, you picked him up and he was just about, what was that? Like your 3rd pick, I want to say?
He was my 3rd pick, but basically like my 1st pick, or sorry, my 2nd pick and my 3rd pick were like basically 2 apart. There was only one other person between me. So my 2nd, I was like, trapping Astrea. Yeah, like same level of priority. Let's go.
Yeah, but that was your 3rd pick and no one picked him up before that, obviously. So you were the first person to pick him. It's still your 3rd pick. And he was maybe the most valuable player for your team for a while, right?
I made deals with like Maynard and Nathanius to not pick him. Like I was like, I will make sure I don't pick these players if you don't pick Astrea. I like actively message people and I'm like, I need Astrea. And I did this before we did any of the picks. I was just like, beforehand, I was just like, yes, I need to make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was probably at the time a trade-off that everyone was like, sure, Ravi.
Yeah, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about? But then he had that great series against Dark in the GSL right before, I believe. And then he had an amazing run in the War Chest Team League. And since whenever we see him face against the top Koreans or even in the North American region, I mean, Astrea shows to be a world-class player as we are now resumed in the game. And also we're talking about Neeb accruing advantages throughout the entire game last game. But that is because Astrea's aggression didn't work, right? Like we know we can backtrack the advantages of Neeb to the very opening where Astrea was making units instead of tech, for example. But since then, he didn't really drop the ball. He was keeping up as best as he could, but he was always one step behind from that opening.
Interesting full wall-off over here. On Romanticide, I mean, you'll see the full wall-offs a lot of the time in PvP, but it's oftentimes on maps where you do have a high ground for your natural. And it's like a little bit easier to defend, and like you can knock down the wall and eventually and still be okay. But yeah, Astrea going for this, it does sort of make things a bit awkward now because the sentries are kind of poking away at the adept and everything. It does wall everything out, but now you kind of got to deal with just the ability for your opponent just poking against the wall for a while.
Yeah, but I don't think he's gonna mind too much actually. If he can deflect this Oracle, which he will, no problem. This looks just fine. The shield battery also in position to do what it needs to do. The probe is hugging that shield battery as well. So this Oracle's not gonna find anything on the side of Neeb. I need that opened with a Zealot and an Adept that were completely ineffective. So I kind of love that wall off in retrospect, Ravi.
Yeah, I'm interested to see when he decides to knock it down because I think that is a part of it, right? The wall off is great in the early game stages. It's just there is a little bit of a cost associated where you are going to be losing one of your gateways a bit later on. Neeb's warp gate is really late compared to Astrea's. Was Astrea just chrono boosting his stuff out, or
he was?
Oh, Neeb went for the Stargate before warp gate, didn't he?
I believe he did, but Astrea was also chrono boosting the warp gate regardless. So
got it.
He's well ahead on that front. And yeah, I mean, Astrea has a bunch of units. They're both going for Blink at the moment. Neeb did pick off a couple of workers there from Astrea's natural with the 2 Oracle combo, which of course means that Astrea's not going to be able to really prevent that from happening too easily. But, you know, deflects the Oracle when the Oracle gets low enough. And all things said and done, it's going to be more or less even on the economic front.
Yeah, no major differences economically. Now, the Oracles do mean that Neeb basically has a little bit more vision out on the map and everything. He should be able to react a bit earlier if Astrea decides to go for a push out, which remember, Link is coming out on relatively similar times for both these players. Astrea was chrono boosting out his warp gate technology and everything. He's been warping in more stalkers as opposed to going for earlier gateways. So I am wondering if he wanted to get aggressive once Blink finished up and just not even knock down his warp gates, literally just blink over. But no, he's got the sentries and everything. He does want to actually have a little bit of a move out here.
He most certainly does, but there is no Robo, and that means no Warp Prism for the time being. So maybe after the next warping, he'll consider moving out. Maybe he just wants to make sure that he can take his third for now, as the Forge is also on the way for Astrea. And I gotta tell you, Ravi, probably one of the most invested people in Neeb winning this game is Wardy for his prediction game, as he wants the 3-1 right now. You know that that Showtime game earlier, voting with his heart kind of stung. And now it's actually gonna be Neeb on the offense. I'm not sure that I was expecting this. Astrea on the chase could get trapped. However, that could be terrible. But now Neeb revealing his hand a little bit by dropping those stasis in the face of Astrea. Astrea will just sacrifice, or partially sacrifice, I guess, the time of a Stalker to activate one of those, and now continuing to hold with the Sentry. Shield battery is almost done.
One more stasis.
Stabilize them.
Yeah, Observer, I think is it in range of the stasis? Can he see this? Yeah. Okay, he can. Okay. I was like, that looks like it's just barely out of range, but no. He can spot it, and Neeb will actually save his stasis. Doesn't quite save it.
Very cool move from Astrea, however, to try to move into the stasis to actually save his Stalker, right? Like that would have been that would have been the ultimate 5-head move to save that Stalker, because that Stalker was not going to live otherwise. But if it walks into the stasis, it's invincible for a while. So then you have an opportunity to just move the army of Neeb from there, save that Stalker's life. It was going to be potentially a Private Ryan type moment. That would have been cool, but it won't happen this time around.
Oh, now interesting. So we don't have charge out for Astrea just yet, but he's already adding on his Templar Archives to complement, +1 weapons and everything. He's adding on a few or like 1 or 2 Zealots here and there with his big Gateway Flood and everything. I find it very, very curious that he hasn't started up charge yet, because everything else really looks to me like he wants to just go for a massive flood off of his 8 warp gates and everything to have that kind of charge lot Archon Stalker army, but not having charge. Okay, he's starting up now. All right, it's maybe not the end of the world and everything, because it's not that much later, but it does feel like maybe he just kind of missed that for a bit.
Yeah, it feels like he might have just missed it for a bit. He will be a little bit slower to his 4th as well, but will be taking that 4th. Doesn't really have the option to be aggressive until that charge is done. So he will just have to settle to be, yet again, a little bit behind in economy, but this is a much more even game than the last. Still, 8 workers in favor of Neeb is not where any player will want to be at this point.
No, probably not, especially with 8 workers and the faster 4th base and everything coming on forward. Now, Neeb is going to be knocking down the rocks, trying to open up the pathways and everything, because he's also got that charge lot Archon army. Neither of these players are showing that they want to immediately go into any of the disruptor plays or anything, even though this is almost like a famous map for both of them to go for the Stalker disruptor plays. I think that both of them are very strong on this map with the Stalker disruptor stuff, but 4th base is going to be potentially the contention point, or maybe even just the center of the map if Astrea decides to move out. No, Astrea does pull back.
Okay, this choke is very dangerous. However, for Neeb to cross over with those Archons especially, that's a lot of Zealots that he wants to use. Maybe breaking these rocks would come in handy, and that's exactly what Neeb is going to do. Give himself a little bit more space to work with, and now Astrea is going to shield those rocks, but Neeb with more Blink Stalkers will actually blink on forward to contest the position from Astrea. So both players really fighting over control of opening or keeping those rocks closed, which is not something that we see very often, but it is cool to see. It's important.
Yeah. I think if Neeb actually really wanted to kill the rocks, though, he could just use his Stalkers to kill the rocks, right? He'd be outranging any of the stuff there from Astrea. And oh man, Probe getting the final taste there. kills the Zealot. He's gonna be able to throw down a little scouting pylon over there. But I like this. Astrea is gonna start throwing that War Prism into the mix, starting to get a little bit aggressive. But Neeb, he's once again kind of just thinking about those next steps a little bit faster, I want to say, than Astrea. He's adding on both the Robotics Bay, which is finished up now, and he's also got the Dark Shrine on the way. Astrea, instead, I want to say that he's been investing more into his army supply, but he's sitting at about even-ish army supply over here. He's got an extra Archon, sure, but it's pretty much even across the board with just Neeb actually leading up a little bit in supply. So I'm not sure. Okay, that's why. I was like, why is Astrea lacking in supply and everything? I was like, because his Robotics Bay is already done. He's already actually a little bit ahead on that.
Yeah, I mean, they both have disruptors on the way 2 at a time. We'll see who is able to capitalize on those first few shots. Neeb is also a little bit quicker to the Dark Shrine and a little bit quicker once again to his 5th. So I mean, all of these advantages won't amount to much. Really, what it comes down to, Ravi, is going to be the big fight, right? Like, if it is in a little bit in favor of Astrea, then the game will stabilize, perhaps in his favor. If it is, you know, a big advantage for Astrea, then he will, I think, claim that advantage overall in the game, whereas Neeb might be able to close out the game outright if he gets a big win in a big fight. So we'll see where and when these players both choose to fight. It's going to come down to those disruptor shots, of course, to the positioning, as Neeb will reveal his positioning by killing one of the pylons of Astrea.
Yeah, and Neeb is actually pushing in on the angle where the 5th base is not going to be going for Astrea. Astrea took the top right-hand base, and whoa! Neeb, he's just full-on committing over here. There's even a few disruptors, and as soon as Neeb spots those out, he's going to start backing off, and he is going to be able to evade the disruptor shots. His own disruptors
scary
coming into the party a little bit later on. We'll see how good the hits are for both these players.
Astrea actually blinking on forward and missing it at first, but then it connects with the second disruptor. Both of those disruptor shots are spent for Neeb. Now the 3 disruptors of Astrea might come into play. One already has its shot ready. Now the other 2 join him as we see the lights turning on the balls. And Astrea on the chase. There is big reinforcements here from Neeb, but shoves a couple of Archons as they retreat. So this is nice for Astrea, who once again shoots 2 disruptors at the same time. That's gonna give Neeb the opportunity to pounce onto the rest of the retreating disruptors. We'll gather one of them. The Immortals on both sides putting in a lot of work, but the greater number of Archons seems to stand tall at the end of the day for Astrea. More or less a wash, slight advantage for Astrea on that engagement perhaps. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of just gonna reset the game altogether.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a situation where Neeb's basically got similar-ish timings on his disruptor counts and everything, but he was having to reinforce from across the map, right? So it made things very awkward. And then I think it just became the situation where Astrea was getting these slightly faster reinforcements and everything for not just disruptors, but the other units as well. Astrea probably a lot happier with how those trades went, just because I think Neeb was slightly ahead before the trades, and now it feels like pretty even, but as I say that, and we are going to potentially be seeing another little trade over here. Astrea is really going to want to have to back out of here. Ooh, this is some really expensive losses.
Big money here from Neeb. He's going to find, like you said, very expensive losses from Astrea, as Astrea has to retreat. But what is he retreating to? Not too much. Needs to consolidate his army here and bring the rest of it here. Now with the disruptors here, he can kind of abandon this position and maybe move with his more mobile army. If Neeb overcommits, this could be dangerous, but Neeb smartly will kind of spot ahead with these oracles. That'll grant him vision of what Astrea is doing, where his disruptors are, and might be able to zone him out in the process. Astrea, in the meanwhile, has decided to cross the map, and this is where it gets dangerous as well for Neeb, who might be forced to recall here. But whoa, Neeb with a lot of DTs already will blink and try to punish the economy of Astrea here on the right-hand side. Stalkers are recalled here. There is an observer as well, and with Zealot Warpins, it looks like Astrea might be holding.
Yeah, I think with the remaining units reinforcing, he will be able to hold over there. Got a little bit scary for both these players, but again, I do want to come back to the fact that Neeb feels like he's been thinking about transition points a lot sooner. His +1 air weapons is finishing up. He's already got a Sleep Beacon finished. He can start on that carrier production as soon as he feels like he has the resources for it. And given that he's basically nearing max out point, he might actually feel like that point is very, very soon.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting stage in the game as well, because as much as we see almost connects onto 3 disruptors there, but as much as we see 18 workers go down there, for example, for Astrea, he can replenish 5 at a time. So he'll just get back to those 80 right away. That's the count that Neeb is sitting at, and it's like nothing happened, right? Because they both have so much capabilities to replenish those units, because they're both basically maxed. And now Astrea on the counter offense. So the terrain can be a lot more annoying to deal with than probes are at this point. That's where Neeb, if he takes down a Nexus, now you're talking economic damage at this stage, as Astrea is going to actually not be... Oh, Astrea will connect onto the disruptors of Neeb, but Neeb does gain the position. That means potentially real estate lost from Astrea. So again, this is where the economic lead will start to vanish for Astrea, and Neeb with a very good stronghold in this late game again.
Yeah, and remember that these, of course, disruptors are so powerful defensively. So, oh my god, this 1DT, if it just realizes to go after the base, it will actually kill the Nexus before the observer pops. But Okay, this gets really, really funky now because a lot of Neeb's army is up here on this high ground being chased by these DTs. A lot of the DTs actually managed to kill a handful of these disruptors, but now Astrea has to back off. He loses a lot of his stalkers with the disruptor shots. Oh man, those are brutal losses he could not afford to lose right now.
Oh, this is looking just so good for Neeb now. If you look at the supply, as Letot would say, it's 50 in favor of Neeb. Astrea trying to make some magic happen, picking off a disruptor here and there, but he doesn't really even have the economy. If the supplies were swapped, I wouldn't even feel super confident that Astrea is definitely winning this game because the economy would still be in favor of Neeb. So once again, we have all of the advantages kind of stacking on top of each other for Neeb, who's gonna just blink and get this Nexus this time around. The job that one DT didn't finish earlier, and it's gonna cost him some DTs. But again, this means that Astrea is reset back to 1 mining base, Ravi to the basically 4 or so of Neeb.
And that is going to be really tough to consider when you have +2 air weapons finishing up alongside that mothership as well. So Astrea has a very, very hard wall to climb, but this is no, not how you climb it. We'll send the stalkers and a move command into the center, but you know, Astrea has actually pulled off some insanely miraculous comebacks. I mean, we were talking about the War Chest Team League earlier. Astrea pulled off insane comebacks from the War Chest Team League, including in this matchup. Let's see if we can make something miraculous happen right now, because that's actually what he needs, is an absolute damn miracle.
Yeah, and if you're not tired of my ancient movie references, Ravi, I'll say that this is a wall that Tom Cruise could probably not climb, right? Like, it looks impossible at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the army for Neeb is still very, very ground-based. Okay, well, if you lose your disruptors, that's going to be hard. Oh, no! The blink forward from the stalkers is going to right-click down those disruptors. Even after taking a few losses there, Neeb is just going to be able to gain a little bit too much ground. He does actually end up backing off there, as maybe a little bit concerned about the massive TT run by is coming onto his radar. But yeah, he's still looking strong.
Yeah, Astrea is still looking focused, and I'm sure he's made a comeback like this before, but to make it happen at this stage and against Neeb, it's gonna be near impossible. Mission impossible indeed, Ravi. I don't know what he has to do. Maybe if he finds the juiciest connections in the world, but I will reserve my excitement for the next series, unless this game somehow starts turning around, Ravi. It seems like it's too far gone, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. Like, this really does seem like it's Neeb's game to lose, but I will say, like, if he gets one big disruptor hit and takes like a very one-sided trade, and mothership recall actually on the entire army there for Neeb on the south side, they're trying to hit the north side. This is actually a really nice move because Astrea's army was heavily based in on that south side, so maybe Neeb can actually hit in on one of the new fresh mining bases over here, and then he can just get out. He can just escape out of here in time safely because his disruptors are now defending that high ground position. How can Astrea get up here?
He can't. Expert maneuvers from Neeb really in the closing moments of this game. I expect that Astrea is just processing the loss at this point. I really have no idea what he could possibly do. Neeb is going to be dropping Stargates, so he is not going to be dropping the ball on any front. He is just looking, you know, he says, if I won't end here, I'll end in 5 minutes. I will get all my stuff situated. There's no way that even if he gets hit by the juiciest disruptor shots ever, he is going to be found at a disadvantage at this point. He is just in such a great position. Another blink forward will net him another observer. Astrea looking for shots will find one stalker. But yeah, that's a consolation prize that's going to be a little too small.
You know, I think before that base went down, before Neeb was able to get a snipe off on that, I could have seen a world where Astrea snipes off like with a big disruptor hit or 2 disruptor hits on a massive portion of Neeb's army. Neeb has the economy to replenish it, but he'd lose a base in the process, and then they'd actually be at relatively even base counts and stuff. But in this situation, it seems like Neeb knows how good of a spot he's in. The DTs blink forward, cleaning up a large supply of the army there for Astrea. Astrea down to half the army supply. He's only got 1 disruptor left over, and I think that this is just Neeb building up a little bit of a nice half place. Okay. almost disruptors his own DTs, but even that would not have been enough, I think, for Astrea.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Neeb not with the honorable Sudoku this time around, and that means that it's gonna be irretrievable for an Astrea that is trying his darnest for the last few minutes. Difficult to blame him. He's gonna miss out on another season finals. Neeb will be joining Scarlet in that season finals to be the North American representation. I mean, and I don't feel like I'm calling it too early, surely, right? Like it seems like that's a given, but If there is a universe where we're wrong about this one, Ravi, I will be happy to eat not a shoe, but two.
Amazing. Well, I think it's unlikely, so we'll come back to that promise later. But yeah, Astrea is, I will say, a little bit, you know, infamous, but also I think like famous for staying in games a lot longer than most people would think is reasonable, just because he has made comebacks and stuff happen. And you know, you lose every shot that you don't take, or you miss every shot that you don't take. So I don't hate that he's trying to give it a shot over here. And I mean, let's also be real
as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also, if you win this game from this position as Astrea, there's 0% chance that Neeb isn't tilted going into game 5, right? Like,
yeah, you basically win the series at that point, I feel like.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be, I mean, it's not going to be happening. It's just like, yeah, no amount of magic, no amount of hoping, no amount of believing should be able to save Astrea. I really love that he continues to be focused. Like, he has been impossible to break on the mental front, seemingly, but finally shakes his head. Now he knows. I mean, now he thinks, okay, it's done. As that final disruptor falls, he will be forced to type